Hi, this is Dave Carr, the creator of WordPress for Toastmasters and your host for this webinar. Looks like we have a few people out there. You can check in through the chat window if you'd like, just to let me know who you are. I will walk through a few slides, do a little bit of demo, and take questions along the way. The idea is to orient people who've heard about the software, are curious about it, as well as to answer questions for anybody who has been trying to set up one of these sites and may need some guidance on what it's good for and how to use the software effectively. With that, let me stop screen sharing for a moment. Hello. So thanks very much for tuning in. My name is David Carr. I'm a writer, editor, and sometimes on the side a web consultant, but primarily I've actually been a technology industry journalist, and I experiment with things on the web that are interesting to me and as a way of getting more hands-on experience with different technologies. WordPress is something I've been interested in for a number of years. And as the story goes, I was VP of Education for a club a few years ago that had some issues with needing to recruit more people. I was also looking for a better way of organizing my club, and so I invented my own approach for that. I was familiar with WordPress. So WordPress, for those who may not be familiar, is a blogging platform first and foremost, but it's also become more than that. The New Yorker website runs off of WordPress. Lots of different marketing organization websites run off WordPress. So it's a very capable publishing platform. And when I saw FreeToast Toast, I guess the advantage to FreeToast Toast is it is specifically for Toastmasters clubs. So it's sort of a template for creating Toastmasters Club websites. And so there's a simplicity to it. It's taken me a while to appreciate that sometimes people who aren't familiar with WordPress will try and set up one of these sites and will be overwhelmed by all the options that they're presented with. And so it is more powerful, but there are also more challenges in some ways. All right, I'm going to go back to screen sharing because it's mostly show and tell that I think you want in this session, but ask me questions as we go along. So just a little bit more introduction. I've written for Information Week, a publication called Baseline Magazine, and also Internet World. So since the mid-1990s, I've been writing about how businesses and all sorts of organizations can take more effective use of the web and social media. I wrote a book called Social Collaboration for Dummies, which is about using the social technologies, things that are kind of like Facebook, but are oriented towards internal collaboration. Actually, Facebook recently came out with a Facebook for Work product that they are marketing to some companies. So let's see. Just post a question in the chat and maybe you can answer back. Trying to make sure that everybody is seeing what I'm trying to show. So my note here was that if you want to have bigger results, you need to get a little bit more ambitious. And I think there actually is a lot that you can do with your club website. And the reason it's important, if it's not obvious, is people check out anything that they're going to buy or belong to or participate in, they look for information online to validate that this is of interest to them. I'm convinced a lot of people who would benefit from Toastmasters really have no idea what Toastmasters is or what it can accomplish or what it's like to participate in it. And so you need to demonstrate for them. You need to show what makes your club special and engaging. And I personally think that it takes more than just a smiling photo of your officers on the homepage, people holding certificates. I like to include elements like video, and I'll show you a little bit of that. Let me go out of the canned presentation actually. And one of the places I always like to start is with a search. And I'll make this a little bit larger so you can see it. But put yourself in the position of somebody who's looking for an awesome Toastmasters club. Search for awesome Toastmasters. You'll come up very quickly with Club Awesome and a bunch of things about Club Awesome. A more realistic search that somebody might enter would be city name plus Toastmasters. And again, Toastmasters comes out on top because we've taken care to make sure that the where we meet and when we meet is very prominently highlighted on the website. And I work to make sure that that little preview snippet that appears if you share something out to Facebook also looks good in that context. But people typically do start with where and when does this organization meet? What are they like? And why should I care? The second thing you want to accomplish besides getting them on search is to provide them with something that's interesting once they get there, that gives them something more about the flavor of the club. So we have an animated picture of the club on the home page. We have what I call a video guide to Toastmasters meeting. So this is an outline showing an example of table topics, of our humorist getting up and telling a joke, of a formal speech. And somewhere else in here, I also have an example of a speech with an evaluation so that you can see how those things go together. So the thing that WordPress gives you is an easy way of publishing to the web, doing it on a regular basis, keeping information up to date, keeping it fresh. And also, it has pretty good social media integration, so we can have a whole row of buttons. So if people do find this interesting, they want to share it with their Facebook friends, they want to share it with their Twitter contacts, we want to make that as easy as possible for them to do. I also have like a little activity log here to try and give people an idea that there is activity constantly going on with this group, that people are signing up for different roles. Give them a peek at who is in the club. So we're not logged in here, so if I go over to the members page, we'll only see the officers and some other people who have chosen to make their profiles public. If I was logged in, I would see a more complete list that includes everybody's phone number and email. And we make it possible for people to decide that they want to publish more information or less, or not to have their information displayed publicly at all. Let's see. Any questions so far? Let's see, Joanne ran into problems with something about creating a channel before you could join the live chat. That's interesting. There is also a Facebook feed at the bottom of the page, Facebook comments feed. So if you want to post a question that way, I'll try and check that also. Somehow, Joanne, you managed to post a question, so I guess you're in here. Give me more questions as you go along. So again, this was originally just a one-off hack for the Club Awesome. When I became an area governor a few years ago, I started talking with other clubs, other areas, and people asked, how could we get access to this? This seems pretty neat, and so I did make it available as what's called open source software. That means that anybody can get it for free. Anybody who has the technical know-how can modify it or update it or tweak it. Hopefully they contribute those tweaks back to me so that I can continue to make the software better. So let's say, I mean, there are a few orders in which I could tackle this material. This is somewhat choose your own adventure, so tell me what makes most sense to you. But let me go back to the slides for a little bit just to give the basics. So 60+ million websites around the world powered by WordPress, the base platform. Gives you professional tools. One of my arguments is if you're serving as a VP of PR or club president and you learn WordPress, then that is actually a professional skill that might be a little bit more portable than learning how to publish to Free Toast Host. So on top of WordPress, I've customized a few things. I have worked on making the branding for the look of these sites consistent with Toastmasters international guidelines. So I have dealt with their brand police, and so far I seem to be in the clear with them. And then adding functions like meeting role sign up, printing the agendas, being able to send out email reminders. So I can manually send out an email reminder. I can also have some automated reminders. So our club meets on Friday mornings. Every Wednesday, folks get a reminder that, hey, you signed up to speak on Friday. Better let the Toastmaster of the day know if for some reason you're not going to be able to honor that. And it also reminds them if they haven't prepared their speech that they need to get it in gear. So there are some automated things we can do by taking advantage of the fact that computers do know how to tell time and can generate reminders and other things to help make things more dynamic along the way. And let's say, I was trying to show some of the other sites that use WordPress. Forbes actually uses WordPress for, at least for large sections of its site. I happen to have a blogging relationship with Forbes and did something the other day about online Toastmasters clubs, more broadly about public speaking skills for the online medium, how your approach needs to be a little bit different if you're doing a webinar or doing an online meeting. And I'm able to log in and post to that site also using WordPress tools. So I'm using this in a lot of different contexts. A lot of district websites actually already run on WordPress. And a number of clubs have set up WordPress sites too. It's just I'm making it a little bit easier to do and making them more capable. My goal is to have one website that serves a variety of needs. So it serves both the needs of managing our agenda and being an outward-facing marketing vehicle. A lot of clubs that use Free Toast Host or who have a WordPress marketing-oriented website will also use something like EasySpeak for their internal club management. I didn't even know EasySpeak existed when I started down this path. So I can't really speak to every detail of the comparison, but there are some tools for tracking performance toward earning a CC, for example. Some of those things still need improvement and refinement, and if there are any other techies on the line who can help with that, that would be just lovely. But so I'm open to improvement. One of the things I try and make clear about WordPress is there are actually several different flavors of WordPress. if you go to WordPress.org, you get access to the open source software that, if you're techie enough to do it, you can download and set up your own website using WordPress. A lot of web hosting providers like GoDaddy will actually sell you a package that has WordPress pre-installed. So that's using WordPress on your own website, your own domain. There's also a company behind the WordPress software. The main contributor to it, or the people from around the world, will contribute code to the WordPress base software. But the company behind it, called Automatic, runs basically a social media service called WordPress.com. So anybody can come there with their email address and some other information and get a free website. And then they will market to you some upgrades that you can add as bells and whistles. But a lot of people are running sites on WordPress.com absolutely for free, including a lot of Toastmasters clubs. WordPress for Toastmasters has kind of that same parallel. You can either get the plugins and what's called a theme, which is the look and feel. So that's what allows you to have the Toastmasters branding at the top of your site. And also, if you add the Toastmasters banner, you automatically get a disclaimer that is required by Toastmasters International, will show up in the footer of your site. So you can get that software installed on your own setup, or you can go to toastmost.org. So if you go to the WordPress for Toastmasters site, there's something that says sign up for my own site. So these individual club websites are hosted at toastmost.org, and your website address would be something like myclub.toastmost.org. In that case, I'm supporting it. I'm looking for things like advertisers or sponsors to help pay the bills over time. But so far, I'm just running it as an experiment. I'm committing to people that I'm not going to leave them out in the cold. If they set up a site there, they should be able to keep it there. And you could also start out with one of these toastmost.org sites and graduate to your own independent website later if it makes sense for you to do that. All right. There is something too that just says support this site, and a few people have given me donations. My home club gave me a donation towards paying the web hosting expenses, and it's not free. I put a few $100s recently into an upgrade that added better security to these websites. So on the left, you see where you would get the software to download. And on the right, you're just filling out a form. You're putting in your name, the name of your club, and the .toastmost.org web address you want. You fill in a few other parameters, and you get a free website. And then WordPress for Toastmasters is the site where I document how the software works. It's sort of the umbrella for all these projects. There is an underlying bit of software called RSVP Maker, which does the basic calendaring of events and allows you to invite people to RSVP or to register for an event. There can be payment via PayPal associated with those also, so you can set that up with a PayPal account, set a price, and collect fees. It is possible to have an event that has a whole series of prices. So, a conference where there's an early bird discount and that disappears off the menu past a certain deadline. So you can set up fairly complicated events, and that is built into the same platform. All those things are available to you if you want to use them to host an open house, I'm currently organizing an online Toastmasters club called Online Presenters, which is supposed to be for people who give webinars or online presentations of various sorts. So we are registering people who are not yet members through the RSVP function. Once they RSVP, if I see that they're already a Toastmaster and they might want to fill a role, then I'll create a password for them and invite them in. So many things are possible. And then the styling is enabled by the theme which I call Lectern. It allows you to pick any of the standard banners for the site. WordPress also allows you to customize a number of things within this theme. So the theme is sort of the general layout and design, but within that you can change the background color, you can change some things about the fonts. It depends on how fancy you want to get. Also, one of the things I did was I based the Lectern theme on a standard WordPress theme that is current with all the latest standards, including the ability for a page to reformat when viewed on a mobile device. That's known as responsive design. So that's pretty important. More and more people are viewing web content on their phone. You want that to be as optimal as you can make it. So my rules are: you want to make it easy to update. You want to dramatize why the Toastmasters experience is worthwhile. Again, doing that with video can be a great way, or just photos of people in action, not just holding ribbons and certificates. Make sure you communicate the basics. Where and when are very critical. Contact information for people who have questions. You want to make all those things very optimal, and you want to optimize for search and social sharing. And I can coach you somewhat on how to do that, and encourage the social aspect as well. Here's an example of social media working with WordPress. So what we're trying to do is promote something on Facebook, but make sure that we link back to the Toastmasters Club website. So here we are promoting the fact that one of our members won an area contest. So we're making a big deal out of this. We're sharing the video. Actually, the video is uploaded natively to Facebook, but then there's a link to come over to people, try and get people to come over and visit the Club Awesome website as well. And you can see I've worked on making sure that there's a headline that makes sense in the context of Facebook. You can be an awesome Toastmaster too. So all those things are worth working on, and they do make a difference. We do have people coming into the club on a regular basis who's saying, I found the website, I saw that this was the right club for me. And then here is the data life cycle that I'm trying to promote. The idea that we're going to create an event, we post it on the website, we email out a version of the agenda that shows where the openings are. So we want people to come, log in, take a role. We want to be able to print the agenda. We want to be able to print a paper sign-up sheet. Typically we use. I don't have everything digital just yet. But you could also bring an iPad into the meeting and fill your openings that way. And then after the meeting, if you really want to make the process complete, you would go back and reconcile, sort of like reconciling your checkbook. You're reconciling the plan with reality so that you have accurate records. And if you're trying to track through the system, CC, that can be valuable. You as Toastmaster of the Day or VP of Education can also go in and edit the signups list. So I'm going to show you all that stuff in a moment. And then I'll throw this up again later as a way of showing ways that you can get more detail. I'm just checking for some additional input through the site. So Sue Ness, who's in the chat, is actually the person who told me that she wanted, I guess she had tried Easy Speak and she wanted something different, but she actually had come up with her own series of Microsoft Access reports. She shared those with me, and we used them as a model for the reporting system that's built in to the into the WordPress for Toastmasters setup today. Justin's asking what plugins are suggested. If you're setting up an independent website, there's a list of standard plugins that I've tended to use on the WordPress for Toastmasters site. There's a page that says how to host your own, and it lists some of the plugins that I've used in that context. What I do for the Toastmos.org, which is supposed to be the simpler service for people who want to have one of these sites, I have basically a collection of plugins that I offer that are high rated and up to date, and hopefully don't have any software security bugs in them or whatever. So I make a bunch of them available that you can just decide to turn on if they make sense to you. And then some people like Joanne have been putting in requests for others that they think would be useful for their purposes, or they may tell me about something that they would like to do, and you describe it in general terms, and I sometimes can find an additional plugin that would enable that. So the concept, if it's not clear, is plugins enable additional behaviors, additional software behaviors on a website. So in this case, normally a WordPress site wouldn't know how to deal with somebody signing up for a role, but here I can click on Take a Role, and it will add me to the agenda. In the mode of being Toastmaster of the day, I can go in and assign myself to be Toastmaster of the day, and I can put in some other people. If I scroll down to the bottom, there's also a place where I can put in information that will appear on the sidebar of the agenda. So by default, it just shows the club mission, but we can also have a note about the dues we need to collect, the upcoming district conference, things like that can also be included on the agenda. There's just a checkbox to include the officers listing. And if I look at the agenda here, make this larger, show a couple of things that you just signed up for, and then on the sidebar you see that this little dues notice that I added is here, and then the officers are automatically listed. So let me check again for questions coming in. All right, I don't see any at the moment. So to try and make this somewhat more concrete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign up from scratch for, let's say, actually that won't work. Sign up for scratch. I'll log myself out. Okay. So this is what the sign up process looks like. So there's some some explanation up at the top. And I am saying that when you come in, if you set up one of these sites and after 90 days you haven't published it, you don't seem to be updating it regularly, I'll delete it. I'll archive it, give you a warning, and then eventually delete it. But what I'm going to do here. So I'm filling out a fairly simple form. The slogan thing is actually in here to fool spam robots. So they're spam robots that go around the web and they fill out anything that looks like a form that might sign them up for something. And believe it or not, that actually is enough to defer most of them. I asked for your time zone, which is important because there's a bunch of timing functions on the site, for example, for reminders. In order for those to work correctly, you have to choose the correct time zone. So if you're not on Eastern time zone in the US, you would scroll down and somewhere in here, you should be able to find a city that is close to you that you can set the time zone to be equivalent to. So when I do that, it generates this screen of information, and the same information is also being sent to me by email. And I just used a dummy email address, but we can see that all the information is here. We have a long, complicated password, but as soon as I log in, I can change that. Now, I would ask you to not change it to the word password or to something else that is really easy to guess. That does cause problems. When you are the site administrator, if you have a password that's a little bit too easy to guess, you could come in and find that your club homepage is filled with pornography someday. So take that a little bit seriously. I probably am going to change this to have it send you a link that allows you to set your password, but the process would be more or less the same. And we will log in as this user, giving me a math problem to solve, which again is trying to stop spam and hacker robots, which can be a problem on the web. So I'm signing in here. It gives me a welcome message that tries to orient me. And what it's telling me is that I'm kind of backstage at the website. I am in the administrator's area. I'm seeing things that the public doesn't see. Also, a regular member would see a much simplified menu compared with this. So this is showing everything that the administrator of the site has access to. If I want to go out and visit the public site, I can go here, and we'll see that there's some default context about the Toastmasters program loaded in here. I would recommend that you replace most of that, maybe keep a little bit of it, but replace most of that with information that is more specific to your own club and the value of your own club. But you'll notice when I'm logged in here, across the top of the screen, there is a menu with a few options, and one of them is Edit Page. So I can go to any page or any blog post on the site and click Edit, and I go into essentially a web-based word processor. And if I want to customize any of this, I can go in and add a link. I can mark things bold and italic, all the basic things you would expect to be able to do in a word processor. One thing that maybe is a little bit different is we have to go to the Add Media button here if we want to add an image. So I'm not even sure what this is going to be, but add this image. Or insert this into the page. When you upload an image in WordPress, it actually gives you a few different options. So I can go back and edit this. I can add a caption. I can decide whether it should be aligned to the right or just appear where I put it. So aligned to the right means it would be sort of tucked into the right of a paragraph. I could align it to the left as well. Typically, when you upload a larger image, it actually creates a few different versions of it for you. So you can choose to use the large version or the smaller version. So there are a lot of powerful options here. And you could go out and find many other resources for information about the basic workings of WordPress. Some of the information that you find might be more oriented towards developers. I sometimes point people to the help files on WordPress.com as tutorials on, the basic operations of how you edit a document in WordPress. But your basic events are set up like that. When I log in for the first time, one of the first things I'll see is a prompt to set up meeting schedule and roles. And I don't care that I didn't save that. But here is where I'm going to set my club schedule. So we meet every Friday at 7 a.m., not 7 p.m. We could set the duration here, although that's actually optional. And then instead of the text of a page here, we see a bunch of different placeholders. So these are placeholders for the different roles and also what I call agenda notes. They're stage directions on Toastmaster of the day opens the meeting. Toastmaster of the day reads the awards, the prizes for the day. Anything like that you can put in a note. You can actually also assign times to be consumed by those activities. And what you get here by default is actually essentially the Club Awesome agenda. So maybe your club doesn't actually have a body language monitor. So we can just highlight that and delete it. Maybe you don't have a humorist, or you call it Joke Master or something. So we'll change that. And then for roles where you're actually looking for multiple people to fill the roles, I can double click on this and I could change it and say we actually only have time for 2 speakers, as they tend to be longer speakers and longer speeches in our advanced club. And we're going to have 2 evaluators. And again, here's where we have this material for the sidebar. I can set that to be the standard for all my events. I can also customize it for individual events. Get to the bottom, I say Save Changes, and it's going to prompt me to create a series of events along that schedule. So these will be individual posts that can be edited and modified independently, but they're based on that template. So they all occur Friday at 7 a.m. and they all have the same list of roles. And again, I could tweak it for one individually if I wanted to. So it projects this out several months in advance. I generate this and I can go in and view any of the individual events. And I should be ready to take a role. So Mr. January is signed up to be the vote counter. Okay, I go back and look for questions because I am okay. Joanne, you asked where did the sidebar text come from? I can show it again if that wasn't clearer, but there's just certain defaults that I set in the system. So when I was setting up the template, it was just a default suggestion to have something appear in that spot. I put in the standard club mission, but it could be anything. So even with that essentially blank or boilerplate template, there was something there, but it can be whatever you want to appear for your club. And it is possible to customize that agenda layout as well. That might be a detail that I won't go into in this discussion, but it is documented in a blog post on the site. So if you decided you didn't want to have a sidebar, but you want to take the information that I have in the sidebar and list it at the end of the agenda, you could do that. Or if you wanted to make the left-hand sidebar wider and the rest of the agenda narrower, you could change those things. Some of that requires messing around with HTML coding. I try and make this something that is usable by people who are not necessarily techies. But if you are a techie, or if you're interested in learning HTML or and other techniques, you can get as fancy as you want to. But you shouldn't have to. And in any of these things, we'll see agenda setup or agenda setup template as options here. So I would click on agenda setup if I wanted to customize just the setup. In other words, the list of roles and that sidebar content. If I want to customize it just for this one specific meeting, because it's a special meeting or it's a contest or something, I can do that. I can also go to agenda setup template and modify the template that all these things are based on. And then after I save my changes, again, I'll be giving it an option to update all the events that were based on that template. So I'm sorry if that sounds confusing, but it is a flexible way of setting up the standard way you conduct your meetings, but then giving you the option to vary it as you need to. Let's see. All right. Joanne says okay. So I guess I've made myself more or less clear with that point. Let's say. All right, so let me go back to fleshing this out. So now I've got that set up, but I don't have any members for my website. So it's also prompting me to add club members. Now I can add them one at a time, or I can download the spreadsheet from Toastmasters International, and I'm going to highlight the cells within that and copy and paste into this space, and it will add them as a batch. So that's the easiest way of bringing all your members into the system and hopefully getting their names and email addresses right, assuming they're right in the Toastmasters International records, which is not guaranteed. But it's a good way of getting jump started. For my purposes here, I'm just going to add one other person. And this is something that you might do if you're just checking this out, and maybe you just want to share it with the president or the VP of education of your club. So maybe you just add one person or a couple of people. And when I say add member, it's going to generate this information that will be sent out to them as an email. So they'll get an email telling them to set their password for this site. let's see, that was set up, so it should have just forwarded to me. So welcome to January Club. Click here to set your password. Okay. And it's also CC'd to the owner of the site so that you can see that people are being added. Because eventually you're probably going to be having your treasurer or your VP of membership taking on that task. So let's say, all right, I was on the add members page. All right, so now I've added at least one member to my site, making a little bit of progress here. And if I go to the settings page, so this is the general layout, there are some general settings to set for any WordPress setup. Then there are settings related to the specific plugins that you have installed. So there's some settings for a VP Maker, and there are some settings for Toastmasters. So we're on the Toastmasters screen. It's telling me that the website is not yet public, so it's a good idea to keep, what we're actually doing is we're discouraging Google and other search engines from indexing the site. We don't want people stumbling across it while it's still just a bunch of generic text. We want to get it in shape and looking good, and then we want to start sharing it with people. Now, the site is public in the sense that you could email the web address to any of your other club officers or to a friend who you want to critique it. It's just not showing up in Google search results. So as soon as you think you're ready to go live, you would change that from no to yes. And then there's also an option to turn on or off any automated emails from the site, such as people being sent the kind of come in and set your password. So if you're just experimenting, if you're putting in fake information, you may not want that to be active. So we now have a couple of people in the system, and we can assign them to be officers. So obviously this would be a longer list if we had brought in all our people. You can change the names of the officers, or maybe your club has an additional officer that doesn't appear in the manuals, but you want to have immediate past president listed. So this informs what shows up on the agenda and also the officers page. You can decide that somebody else who is not already an administrator should get admin rights, or you can make them what I call a manager. So a manager has editing rights on the website and can also add and edit member records. Doesn't have access to absolutely all of the administrative superpowers, but it's a good idea to have somebody to be your backup. Probably, if you have a techie in the club, maybe you want to make them your backup administrator, so that they can go in and fix things when you're not available to. And also certainly having other people have the rights that are necessary to add members, giving that power to your VP of membership or your treasurer. Those are things you want to do. Let's see, there's a bunch of other options here. You can have a custom message on the login page, a message that appears to members on the dashboard, a message that appears only to officers on the dashboard. So I'm setting up an online club called Online Presenters. In fact, we start meeting Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There are time zone conversions showing up on the website. So if you'd like to come to one of those meetings, you're welcome to. We have a login to an online meeting service that I'll share with just the officers. And so I'm going to post it in this space so that when they log in, they will see what they need to do. If I can't make it to a meeting and they need to act as the meeting host, they'll be able to log into the website, get the password information, and start the meeting as the admin. Some other options for customization. We can decide whether we want to show times on the agenda, and there's another process involved in making sure that that works properly. By default, that's turned off. The sign-up sheet by default shows 3 future meetings. You can change that. And there are a bunch of other options we can set. Usually the first thing you would do probably is set up who your officers are on this page, and maybe appoint a backup administrator who can help you out with the setup of the website. So I will record that information. And it's reminding me up here that the site is not set to public yet. Do I want to set it to public? Well, no, I'm not quite ready. All right. So let me go back to questions. All right. And see more questions, ask them as you have them. Actually, we have a small enough group that if anybody else wants to join in the live video meeting, I could also send you an invite to do that, to ask questions live. So tell me what I haven't covered that you would want to know. I'm going to just quickly show online presenters, because this is another project that I'm quite enthusiastic about. So this is, again, supposed to be a club that meets online, and its target audience is people who are trying to learn professional skills for webinars or other forms of online meetings, online training, anything like that. So again, we have a list of roles we're trying to sign people up for the coming meeting. For this particular one, I don't usually have both the meeting role signups and the RSVP form on the same page, but in this case, since we're trying to get people to come in who may not even be Toastmasters yet, but who have a professional interest where this would be useful to them, they're able to fill out the RSVP form. I'll get a notification, and from there I can send them a password if they would like to fill a role at the meeting. Let's see. And because I was signed in as Mr. January rather than May, I wasn't seeing some of the options there. So let's come back as the president of this club in formation, and I'll show you a few things that I've tweaked for this setup. So on the dashboard, the main screen that you see when you first log in, there's a summary of the next few upcoming meetings, again with an invitation to sign up or to edit signups or to email out the roster. If I want to email out the roster, this is what that looks like. It opens up in a separate page. It includes the content from the agenda. It specifically shows what meeting roles are open, and it invites people to click here to sign up for roles. One of the customizations I did for this particular club is I did modify the agenda. So instead of having a sidebar, this does have that sidebar type information listed down at the bottom. And then we also have the speech introductions listed on this same page. So the idea here is we're probably going to be maybe pulling this up on the screen online rather than printing it, or maybe just the Toastmaster of the day is printing it. It's not the same scenario as if I'm going to print 20 of these and I want to save on paper by having that sidebar format. Let's see. Speech introductions can also be shown as a separate page. So you can pull this up prior to your meeting, print it out, and carry it up to the front of the room in a traditional brick and mortar Toastmasters meeting. That's actually a new feature. You can export the agenda to Word. And hopefully this works with the customizations I've made lately. So the idea here is to take advantage of a familiar tool, Microsoft Word, and we can allow the somebody to come in and tweak the formatting further, or just pretty it up somehow, or print it on special paper, you know, whatever they want to do that's a little bit custom, they can do without becoming an HTML wizard. Let's see. And I said I wasn't going to show this, but just quickly, since I mentioned it. So customization for the agenda. So let's see. Okay, so the choices for agenda layout are a plain layout, a layout which does not include the sidebar at all, the sidebar layout, or you can set it to custom. And if you set it to custom, you'll get an additional link here that says edit custom agenda. And this allows me to customize the HTML of the page if I want to. I can take these little placeholder icons and move them around. The one for the speech introductions is actually something that is new that I just added. So you can have the speech introductions on your agenda page if that would be useful to you. And as I said here, the sidebar is down the bottom. The default custom layout starts with basically the sidebar setup, and there's HTML table code separating the sidebar from the main agenda listing of who's filling what roles. So here I've taken that code out. I can access. So the items for all these other customizations, those are also these little placeholder codes. It's just that when I was the VP of Education, since I wrote the software, that was more or less acceptable to me to go in and mess around with changing this coding. What I've tried to do is add these little pop-up editors to make it easy for people who aren't necessarily techies to customize the setup. So what it's doing behind the scenes is it's actually writing out to that format that you saw with things in the angle brackets. And this is a custom one I came up with just for this club. Maybe it'll work its way back into the base software, but that just shows a link to get the time zone conversion that appears in the email version of the website. So, you know, I'm always experimenting and trying to improve this. One other thing that I should show on the Club Awesome website is this whole reporting system. And again, thanks to Sue Ness for advising me on what would be useful for that to contain. But if I log in here and go to the dashboard, there's this menu called Toastmasters that I've added, and anybody can go in and see a report on their own progress. And so to the extent that somebody's doing all their speeches at the same club, this is going to be pretty accurate. There is a way of adding member speeches. I have speeches that I've given at other clubs that I need to go in and record here. But if you're the VP of Education and you're trying to figure out who might be close to earning a CC award, or maybe earning a second CC award, this would give you an idea of where people stand. And maybe I shouldn't mess around here too much because I'm showing off people's private information, but and this is supposed to show what things are done and what need to be due on the way to competent leader, which is a little bit more complicated. I may eventually find a better way of visualizing this. And we can see, in addition, people who are working on advanced awards, where they are in that process. The reconcile screen is where you would go to reconcile the records from a previous meeting to say that maybe somebody didn't show up, and I can see that our VP of Education has already done this. I know somebody signed up to be the greeter and didn't make it. There are probably some other substitutions in here where one person wasn't able to attend and another person swapped in. So we try and make sure that way that people get credit for what they've actually done. All right, I'm going to go back to showing my final summary screen. If you do want to follow up with me, that's where you can get information about lots more of these questions. I don't see any other questions pending, so I'm going to wrap up for today. Thanks for tuning in. There will be a replay available that you can share with other folks. Thanks very much.